Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Max speaking. I hope you're doing fantastic today. We're streaming from Sherwood Park here. So we have an independence meeting here today at 7. The show's going to start soon. Speakers not ready yet, but should be there in a minute. In the meantime, I would like to thank you for your patience and your time. Don't forget the super chats and all that stuff, because that is what keeps things going here. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you in a bit.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's Chris here from the Whistle Stop Cafe in Mirror, Alberta. I'm in beautiful Sherwood Park at the Sherwood Park Log Cabin, and we're going to do another Let's Talk Alberta event. So again, what we're going to be doing here is, saying our piece about Alberta independence, and then we're going to open it up for questions and comments, objections, concerns, whatever. And we're going to have discussions about Alberta independence with who are concerned about their Alberta. So stay tuned, and we will be with you shortly.
So I was told that the live stream, the speakers will be ready in about 5-10 minutes. In the meantime, you can also consider donating, and also give some super chats that keeps the light and things up and going. I'd like to thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you in a bit. My expectation is that we're probably going to have like 1,000 people watching today. That's my expectation. 5,000? That's awesome. Actually. Yeah, because now what I'm doing is I'm live streaming on Chris's platform as well. So he's like linked to my account. Lots of people on the live stream. That's also lots of people in here. Isn't that cool, eh? Drop us on the chat where you guys are from. That would be fantastic to see. Just drop on the chat where you guys are watching from. Okay, so we got people from Nova Scotia watching. Oh, that's awesome. So time to read some of the comments here. We got people from Edmonton watching from Olds, Drayton Valley, Red Deer as well too. That's fantastic. Where you guys are watching from right now? Calgary. Hello from BC. Hey, look at this. People watching, say, Peace River, watching from Stettler. Where you guys are watching right now? Put it on the chat. We're saying right now, the referendum. We're not watching from the referendum. That's not a place. East of Ponoka, from Bassano, Drayton Valley, Strathmore. We got people. What else are you guys watching? Or you guys are watching Vegreville. You're watching from Vegreville, Southern Manitoba. What are you guys from Southern Manitoba? Where is that? Fort Sask there. That's fantastic. Or you guys are watching too. Are you looking at the chats where you guys are watching from? That's going to be fantastic. Rocky Manor House, Talman, Alberta, East of Trushu. Thanks from St. Harry, from Harry, Saskatchewan. Oh, I've been there. Viking. I was in Viking the other day. Thunder Bay. Hello from Florida, from Toronto, but cheering for separation. Independence, not separation. Independence. Golden, BC, St. Albert. Oh, that's awesome. Blackfoot Territory. Oh, that's fantastic. Airdrie, Tollfield, Tabard. Oh, you guys are watching. Nice full room, of course. All from BC. That's fantastic. West Ponoka, right there. That is awesome. Brandon. Oh, let's go, Brandon, Manitoba. Let's go, Brandon, from Penticton. Another wise from Penticton. Sylvan Lake watching. Alberta, listening in Red Deer. Awesome. Where you guys are watching from? Arizona. Hey, we got people from Arizona watching. We got people from Arizona watching. Where you guys are watching from?
What's that?
I'm telling you, from Fort McMurray. I'm going to sit on the speaker. It'll be such fun. We got... Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
How many watching?
We have 206 people watching. 206 people watching. We have people from Ottawa watching. We got people from Fort McMurray, West Edmonton, Sylvan Lake, Penticton, Red Deer, Vancouver Island. I know. Vancouver Island watching. Edmonton, let's go. We have Batnuni, BC. I don't know what it is. Edmonton, let's go. We have Calgary. We have how many people watching online? Where you guys are watching from? All right. Parkland, Alberta. Is that Portland County? Barhead, Athabasca County. You good? Yeah, I'm gonna ready. We're gonna start soon. I just need to clear registry in my mind.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And how are you this evening? My name is Shane Meikle, and I am going to be your MC. But this will be the first and last time you see me up here. So I go over a couple of housekeeping things first. We have emergency exits there, and over there. And I'm your flight attendant for the day. The bathrooms are just down the hallway here. And we have a gentleman that has gone to get us coffee. So there will be coffee. So after it gets here, you'll be able to go grab yourself a coffee. The other thing is that this is funded entirely by donations. So I have a couple of gentlemen that are going to grab the donation things. If you're able to put something in there, it's greatly appreciated because it helps pay for us to continue. We are going to do about 240 more of these around the province from here to October. So it's greatly appreciated if you can help. So our very first speaker of the night is a gentleman by the name of Mr. Ben Crane. He is a cartoonist, a songwriter, a comedian, and he has, at the end of his speech, he is going to do a song that he wrote specifically for the movement. So if you could welcome Mr. Ben Crane.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that more than I can say. In fact, you know how crappy the weather was today? I was driving with one hand and trying to keep one eyeball on the road because you couldn't really see where the road ended and the ditch started. But I had another song going through my head. So I was dictating that. So one of these days I'll bring that one out. But we won't worry about that tonight. How are you folks doing? Woo! That wasn't just a little bit good. That was really good. Most of you know me as an entertainer, a humorist, someone who sings really goofy songs and don't stay serious all that long. You're right, because in most cases I am. But those of you who know me a little better know a very little known fact that I can actually go deep. I don't stay there all that long, but when things get serious, I go there. My wife, Charmin, and I, and she can't be here tonight. She came down with bronchitis, so I'm here by myself. So if I look like I'm not behaving, that's probably the reason why. My wife, Charmin, and I live on a family home section with about a 150-mile view of the blue Canadian Rockies. And our grandkids are 6th generation, and that's really rich to us. And Charm actually knew, as he spent time with her great-grandparents, the ones who bought the land off the original homesteader, some 115 years ago. So we have a connection to the land, quite literally. And this is where we get our values from. They're passed down from generation to generation. And we see it every day. After visiting with Grammy, we got two grandkids, 4 and 5 years old. They walk home across the gravel parking lot from our house to their house. And 5-year-old grandson, he takes his 4-year-old sister's hand and he protects her from coyotes and vehicles and other things that go bump in the dark. And at the end, he opens the door for her, lets her go in, and he says, "Ladies first." Values are passed down because they work. So my job here tonight is not to try to convince you with facts. We've got really, really smart guys here who are far better qualified for that. I just simply want to let you know the heart of why my values no longer relate to the values of this country. And I want to unpack 3 slogans that have often made it as the subheadings to our movement. Do you remember what they are? Faith, family, freedom. Absolutely. And they all start with the same letter. So when you look at these through the eyes of values, it becomes something tangibly appealing, something to be grasped. And just to be different, I'm going to approach them in reverse. Most folks think of freedom in terms of freedom from tyranny, oppression, government overreach, dictatorship, all that ugly stuff that controlling folks love to dish out. And simple common sense tells us this is just wrong. But what if we twisted that around a bit and thought of freedom as in freedom to? Freedom to thrive, not just survive. Freedom to be what you were built to be, what you're good at. Freedom to run your business the way you know it needs to go. Free from interference and micromanagement by people nowhere near you, who have never heard of you, have no vested interest in you, and quite honestly don't give a flying rip about you. It's a family show. And freedom to fail. This is a good one. Freedom to learn from your own mistakes. I always think of a Peanuts cartoon strip where Lucy and Peanuts are sitting there under a tree philosophizing, and she's bemoaning the fact that someone ignores common sense and does something stupid, bonking his noggin. Now the law says everybody got to wear a helmet to protect themselves from getting hurt because we obviously don't have the common sense to avoid the trouble. And Peanuts' reaction is brilliant, and I want to put it on a t-shirt. It says, "Stupid should hurt." A truly free society will boast the most successful, highly motivated people and the most vibrant economy, in my opinion, with citizens who breathe life into their community, not suck it out. And we're experiencing an alarming loss of freedoms. Is there any hope? What if we could actually change all that and take back the freedoms that have been stolen? That gets me excited. Family. The strength of community is, I believe, is directly related to the strength of the family. And family strength relies on and is a direct result of values. Family is parents passing down values to your kids. Family is staying connected with your grandparents and learning from their wisdom and their experiences. Look what 4-H has done for families and individuals since 1913. That's many moons. Right in its pledge, said before each meeting, even today, it promises to build into the members' life character for the betterment of their club, their community, and their country. That's family values. Family teaches all manner of values. The value of other-orientedness. Think about management of a bathroom. School mornings or Sunday mornings in a family of 4 or 5 girls. Or with Michael, a family of 17 girls. Give or take. The value of working together, of cooperation, and accomplishing things together as teams. The value of getting along with other people. Ouch. Other people with differing opinions in yourself. Hearing them and understanding them and not resorting to calling them names when you lose the argument. We've never seen that, have we? Hey, you can always change your friends, but you're stuck with your family. See, Albertans, I believe, are individual thinkers. We like to make our own decisions, and that applies to family. We want to raise our own kids without the government undermining or overriding the values of our families. Choice in education and complete decision-making in healthcare are just 2 examples. There's a whole bunch more out there. Freedom and family and faith. This is a fun one. To me, the one with the most hope. I hear folks saying that running a country based on Christian values is shoving religion down people's throats. But I suggest the contrary. That the concept of forcing anything, ideology or anything that's like that, is diametrically opposed to Christianity. God himself operates on the basis of free will. And dang, am I happy for that. In fact, you don't even have to be a Jesus follower to appreciate honesty, truth, respect, fairness, no tolerance for stealing or deception, to appreciate living in peace with your neighbor, and appreciate the simple fact that your neighbor helps you out when you're in crisis. These are all Judeo-Christian values that society has been based on since its inception, and they benefit absolutely everybody. So to the Christian, though, I will say this. And by the way, if you're not in this camp, don't sweat it. Feel free to tune me out for just a second. However, I will leak a big spoiler alert right here because you still get in on the incredibly huge benefits of what I'm talking about. It's a win-win no matter. So to the Christian, do you fully understand the impact that your personal faith has on your country? Jesus himself says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, seek my face, and pray, and turn from whatever it is you're packing that just doesn't line up with God. He says, you do those 3 things, I'll meet you. I'll do 3 things. I promise I will hear. I promise I'll forgive. Oh, I love that. And I will heal your land. When that hit my brain a little while ago, I actually kind of landed up in a puddle on the floor because I felt hope for the first time. Can you imagine what the new country of Alberta could look like with a direction like this? And the cool thing is that all of this would positively benefit even the most devout atheist. So it's just a win-win. So remember, how you handle your faith will impact your country. So there they are, faith, freedom, and family. And these are all values that have been time-tested and proven for eons. Entire countries have been founded on this. And probably I would even dare guess to say most countries are founded on that. I've heard the nostalgic concern bemoaning the breakup of a family, and I get it. Divorce ain't pretty, no matter what way you slice it. But folks, this country's already broke up. People say Alberta started out our history with Canada completely broken, but I kind of disagree, because I think we're on the outside on purpose, with intent. And change is literally impossible, and doing nothing has now become the greater risk. It can be argued that we're not the ones leaving. We've by and large kind of maintained a steady course forward, sticking with these traditional values that we hold dear, while the rest of the country has veered off sharply into foreign waters. No pun necessarily intended, but maybe it is. That Canada that we fondly remember is actually closest resembled, in my opinion, by Alberta. We have one chance, folks, and it's a rare gift, a precious gift that's been handed to us to reestablish those time-honored values into a new constitution, a new country, a new future. And the only way to accurately predict your future is to write it. Here's our only chance, neighbor. Let's grab a pen, start writing. The other day, when I was invited to join the tour, Shane asked me, he said, "Well, you can just write a song. You songwriters can just do that." I thought, yeah, right, okay, sure. I get home, and I cannot get that thought out of my head. So this song kind of writ itself very quickly. It's called My Alberta Roots Run Deep. I did not know I could do that. I'm either ambidextrous or, I don't know, maybe we just wrote something new that just has never happened before. So I did record this at home, so this is me playing all the other instruments. It's just I can't do that all at the same time. So here we go. My Alberta Roots Run Deep. The only life I know goes back 100 years. Deep, deep traditions, sweat, blood, and tears. The value of hard work, confidence, hope, family, and value of burden. What makes me want to hold on to what I know is right, and in stand my ground and fight. My Alberta, I need in my blood, in my bones, make it stronger every day. And if somebody wants to move in, take it all the way. I just draw a line there in the sand, stand my ground and say, Alberta, run. Living on the land watching life come and go, working hard and playing hard in sunshine and in snow. We don't really ask for much because we know that God provides and has given us all the tools we need this life and strive. What makes us want to hold on to what we know is right in the faithful position. Stand our ground and fight our Alberta deep in our blood, it's in our bones, it gets stronger every day. When somebody tries to move in, tear it all away. Strong like there in the sand, stand our ground and say, our Alberta roots can't hide and stay behind. They made us who we are today, and life's this good, it don't run away. Alberta, run deep. Can't dig 'em up, pull 'em up. They go deeper every day. Everybody tries to move it, tear it all away. Draw a line there in the ground, stand the ground and say, my Alberta, run deep, run deep. Thank you so much. That is the truth, and I absolutely love it. Michael, are you ready? You was born ready. I'd like to introduce you to the next speaker here tonight. He's a doctor. That means he's practicing. No, he's a doctor of political science. He's a political science. He's a regular columnist with the Western Standard. And would you welcome, please, the good brother, Dr. Most Holy Reverend, great guru. You might as well get up here because I'll keep talking. Michael Wagner.
Okay, I'm supposed to announce that there's coffee and refreshments in the back corner for those who would like that. And just add a correction to what Ben mentioned there, we don't have 17 daughters. We only have 9 daughters. So, but it can seem like 17 if you're waiting for the bathroom, though, I guess. So what I want to talk about tonight is to say that Alberta independence is the way to preserve what was best about Canada. You know, Canada was once a very great country. For its first 100 years or so, Canada was known for exceptional national projects. We built a railway across the northern part of the continent. We built a country out of a rough and cold wilderness. We turned the wilderness into a prosperous and vibrant community. And our military was known for its effectiveness in war around the world. But since the 1960s, Canada has changed. Liberal leaders decided to remake Canada into a different kind of country, one that prioritized leftist social engineering over the country's historic identity and achievements. Now, this transformation was noticed by some people and criticized by some, and the best critic in my view was Ted Byfield, the founder of Alberta Report magazine. Now, Ted Byfield actually grew up in Toronto, but he moved out west and became a fervent Alberta patriot. And he talked about how when he was growing up in Toronto, which would be probably about the 1930s or 40s, Canadians still thought of themselves as British North Americans. He mentioned how, you know, our flag back then was the Union Jack, or at least the red ensign, which had the Union Jack up in the corner. And the Union Jack actually consists of 3 crosses. The cross of St. George of England, the cross of St. Andrew of Scotland, and the cross of St. Patrick from Ireland. So it's 3 crosses form the Union Jack. So it's an explicitly Christian symbol. So it referred to Canada's Christian heritage. We had a Christian heritage originally as a country. But a flag, of course, was changed in 1965 by Prime Minister Lester Pearson, and the Christian symbolism of the Union Jack was replaced by the pantheistic symbolism of the sugar maple leaf. So the sugar maple does not even grow in Western Canada, and the leaf of that tree was to represent the whole country, even though it doesn't represent us. But the change in the flag represented, the change that was coming from the Liberals in terms of what our national identity would be. So when you weaken the national identity of a country, people are still going to want to identify with something. So many people in Canada would identify with their region or their province. You'd have criticisms of regionalists for people who identify with the region or their province, but it was because the federal government was attacking our national identity. And this is important because sometimes Albertans who support independence are accused of being disloyal to Canada, but that's not true. Albertans who support independence are often those who remember and deeply love the Canada that existed before the Liberals wrecked it. So already by the 1980s, Ted Byfield was talking about how we have 2 Canadas emerging. By 1980, Pierre Trudeau had been Prime Minister for 12 years. 2 Canadas were emerging, Old Canada and New Canada. Old Canada was essentially created in a sense by John A. Macdonald and gave us a constitution in 1867. And New Canada was being formed by Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, who gave us a new constitution in 1982. So these are like 2 different countries. And Ted Byfield wrote about the differences between these 2 countries, and I just want to read a quote from him about the 2 countries. Old Canada had some harsh laws, but was safe to live in. New Canada has enlightened, lenient laws, and is increasingly unsafe to live in. Old Canada was generally committed to the free enterprise system, modified where necessary. New Canada is increasingly committed to the socialist system, magnified where unnecessary. Old Canada met its military obligations, in fact served magnificently in 2 world wars. New Canada has virtually no army and has reneged on its military obligations. Old Canada was frugal and poor but paid its way. New Canada runs at a $14 billion deficit. Now, that $14 billion figure is from 1980, so by today's standards it'd be much bigger. But these are 2 fundamentally different countries. And so when the question arises as to which country is worthy of support, he mentioned there's a particular question we have to ask. Ted Byfield, this is a particular question we have to ask. He says, when people put the question, are you loyal to Canada? I have to ask, to which Canada? The one we used to know, or the one which Mr. Trudeau is forcing upon us? I certainly felt part of the first, but that country doesn't seem to be there anymore. About the second, I have grave doubts. So it's not a question of being disloyal to Canada. It's a question of determining which Canada you're loyal to, Old Canada or New Canada. Our national identity was constantly under assault from Pierre Trudeau, but to be loyal to Trudeau's New Canada is to be disloyal to the original Old Canada. So Pierre Trudeau transformed Canada into a different kind of country, one that is no longer recognizable to most of us. So how did Trudeau fundamentally transform our country? He didn't like the country the way it was, and so he wanted to make it into something different. Well, the simplest way to change a country comprehensively is to change its constitution. The constitution of a country is its foundational document, the document that creates the country, creates the different levels of government and explains the role of the citizens and so forth. The Constitution is the fundamental document of any country. So when you change the Constitution, you change the country. And this is something that Pierre Trudeau knew very well. He did not like Canada as it was, and so he set out to change the Constitution to make it into a different country. So when he was Justice Minister in 1968, he already came forth with his proposal for a Charter of Rights and Freedoms in 1968, and the federal government published that proposal as a book. So in this document, this book that he wrote, he said that he wanted to create a constitution that would guarantee Canadians' rights. Like the way Canada's political system was at the time, we followed the British system, where our rights were protected kind of in an unwritten form, but through common law. Where Trudeau wanted an explicitly entrenched constitution, like with explicitly enumerated rights, like the Americans had. The Americans had a Bill of Rights with written rights in there. That's one way of protecting rights. The other way is a Canadian and British way of having, following through common law and historical practice. So Trudeau argued that, if we did not have explicitly enumerated rights like the Americans have, we actually wouldn't have constitutional protections. But that's not true, because when you look at Canada's history, like look at 1968, no country in the world protected individual rights better than Canada did. There was countries who would be similar to Canada, like say Australia or Britain in protecting rights, but there was no country that protected rights better than Canada did, even though we did not have one of those documents with explicitly enumerated rights. So Trudeau was essentially kind of misleading Canada, in my view, misleading Canadians by saying we had to have our rights entrenched in the Constitution. Nevertheless, though, he had an easy sell to people. He'd go to people, don't you want your rights written right into the Constitution? And who would say, no, I don't want my rights written down. So it was an easy sell for Trudeau, and he was able to convince most Canadians that we did need this Charter of Rights. But I don't think we really did need it. Anyway, Trudeau's sales pitch worked, and in 1982, we got a new constitution with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So that's 1982. But the Charter did not come immediately into effect in some of its sections because the federal and provincial governments were given 3 years to bring their laws into conformity to the Charter before it came fully into effect in 1985. Because if they brought it fully into effect in 1982, there'd be several laws that would contradict the Charter, and there'd be all kinds of court cases. So they gave the governments 3 years to fix those laws first to prevent that kind of thing from happening. So in 1985, the Charter was coming fully into effect. At that time, our Justice Minister was John Crosbie of Brian Mulroney's government. So John Crosbie is overseeing the Charter coming fully into effect in 1985, and this is what he said publicly. I'm going to read what he said. The public does not realize that we already have had a revolution in Canadian society. The adoption of a charter was a revolution. It has changed the whole power structure of Canadian society. It has taken tremendous power from governments and given it to the courts of Canada, the Supreme Court of Canada, which is not widely realized. Therefore, we are in a whole new legal environment in Canada. There has been a revolutionary change. The adoption of the Charter, he says, was a revolution in Canadian society. Now, when they were talking about adopting the Charter up to that time, they did not tell us it was going to be a revolution, but once we adopted it, that's what was coming into effect. We were having a revolution. So over the next few years after the Charter came into effect, many laws and policies were struck down as a result of the Charter. So the Charter delivered a fundamental restructuring of our country, because that was the revolutionary change it brought. In 1994, Dr. William Gardner wrote that the Charter was, quote, an entire state enterprise for the reshaping of Canada. He went on to say that Pierre Trudeau viewed the Constitution, quote, as a means to the achievement of some ideal state, an instrument for forcing society into a predetermined social and political mold. And this is exactly what Pierre Trudeau achieved. With his so-called Charter of Rights, he essentially refounded Canada as a different country, one that fit his ideological program. Each and every day, the courts across Canada enforce Trudeau's vision of Canada using his Charter of Rights. Even today, the courts are using that. So in this sense, Pierre Trudeau rules Canada from the grave. He is dead but not gone. His ideology continues to shape our country and will continue to do so thanks to the Charter. And I have a really good example of that from January. This is a column from January 29th, 2006, so just a few weeks ago, from Ted Morton. Now, Ted Morton was a political scientist at the University of Calgary for several decades, and then he became a provincial cabinet minister. So this column he wrote is, the Charter is gutting the provinces, and the data proves it. It's based on a study from the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. So what happens, of course, provinces are passing laws every year, and some of those laws are challenged in the courts and go all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada. And the Supreme Court of Canada tends to strike down provincial laws. And this has been going on since the Charter was implemented. So every year, our provinces are losing power based on court decisions, or by court decisions from the Supreme Court based on the Charter of Rights. So Trudeau's been dead for 25 years, and still his Charter is leading to provinces losing more and more power over a period of time. So he's been dead, and his ideological program continues to be implemented right across Canada. So even though, besides changing the Constitution, Pierre Trudeau and Justin Trudeau in particular wanted to change Canada's national identity. And you might remember that shortly after Justin Trudeau was elected in 2015, he was interviewed by the New York Times. And Justin Trudeau told the New York Times in 2015 that Canada is a country with no core identity. He said Canada is the first post-national state. And the New York Times rightly pointed out that in saying these things, Justin Trudeau was the avatar of his father's vision. So Justin Trudeau was kind of like the culmination of his father's vision. He was fulfilling his father's vision and declaring Canada to have no core identity. And so instead of Canada's historical national identity, the Liberals, like Pierre and Justin Trudeau, wanted Canada to be identified by abstract universal concepts. Instead of our history, we'd have abstract universal concepts. Diversity, tolerance, inclusivity. That's supposed to be Canada's identity now, but that's not our historic identity. They're replacing our historic identity with abstract universal concepts that could be applied to any kind of country. But many people still remember the old Canada and what it meant. We want our country back. This is why we support Alberta independence. Good old Canada has vanished. In its place, we have new Trudeau Canada, which reeks of wokeism, socialism, and an emerging police state. But an independent Alberta can and will uphold the noble traditions and freedoms of the original Canadian dream. Thank you. Now it's my privilege to introduce the next speaker. Sorry about that. The next speaker is Kathy Flett, and I met Kathy originally at a Wexit meeting more than 5 years ago. She's become one of the most important speakers on the independent circuit. She believes in Alberta deeply and as a great asset to our movement. You know, speaking at many meetings, trying to convince people to support Alberta independence. So please welcome Kathy Flett. Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's all right. Put me back after Michael, and now look at what I gotta do. Man. Thank you guys for coming out. Can I just quickly ask, how many of you, this is the first sort of political event you've ever been to? That's lovely. That's lovely. Congratulations. Most of us don't actually know too much about our own provincial history. When I went down the rabbit trail of finding out how we got to be where we are today, imagine my shock when I came across this quote. We desire, every patriotic Canadian desires, that the great trade of the prairie shall go to enrich our own people in the East, to build up the factories and workshops in Eastern Canada and contribute in every way to its prosperity. Those words were said in 1904 by the Honorable Sir Clifford Sifton. Of course, this was the year before we became a province. And what most people don't know, and I didn't either, is that Alberta and Saskatchewan are the only two provinces within this confederation that were colonized. There were no negotiations. There were no talks. There were no meetings. We were just told, this is how it's going to be. Suck it up. There wasn't even an election. We were appointed our first premier, who happened to be a Liberal. Shocking. And here we are all these years, decades, over 100 years later, and the more things change, the more they stay the same. We're told that, well, the East has 2 times the MPs and 2 times the senators as the West because it's representation by population. Get busy, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, well, let's visit that. Does the math? What time did the last provincial election get called? Does anybody remember in the spring? What time did they call that provincial election? When did they call the winner? 8:09. What time do our polls close? 8 o'clock. They hadn't even ripped open our ballot boxes to see who we voted for. Even if you voted for the winner, and in this province, y'all best be careful if you admit that publicly. But if you did, they didn't need your vote to do it, so it still didn't count. The math ain't mathin'. Knowing that everything that goes through Parliament has to go through MPs first, vote on it, and then it goes to the Senate, right? The Senate, other than a handful, are all Liberal appointees now. We don't vote them in. We try, but we don't. Did you know that? They're all Liberal appointees. So even if Poilievre had gotten in, would it have mattered? You see, the system is not broken. It's working exactly as it's designed. So we have a problem. And now we're starting to really, really think about that problem. And when we do, we get accused of, oh, it's just all about pipelines. All right, let's talk that out. Is it really all about pipelines? It's part of it. But Energy East, we were told, was socially unacceptable. So we didn't get to build it. That was what we were told. Yet the East gets its oil and now natural gas from other countries. As our Prime Minister tells us, we're going to be our own best customer. Elbows up. All right. Okay. Northern Gateway. We had another idea. Northern Gateway. Let's go. There's a looming shortage now. That pipeline would be amazing to have right now in the state that we're in. Nope. No can do. Might be a frog in the water. Can't happen. Dirty oil. Keep it in the ground. And by the way, Alberta, we bought you a pipeline. Remember? Trans Mountain, hello. You know what? If the truth about Trans Mountain was actually told, it should be a national embarrassment. So is this all about the money and pipelines? Or is it about what's behind it all? Let's talk taxes. Equalization. Our money is good enough for the East, but not our product, right? Equalization is a fancy, very long formula that determines who the have provinces are and who the have-nots are, and they take from the have to give to the have-nots, and very simplistically, all it means is that even when we are in a recession, we pay, and even when eastern provinces are not, they receive. The reason for that is because Harper changed it to include 50% of our resource revenues, but exclude Quebec's for eastern votes. So is it all about money all the time? Or is it about fairness? The national debt. We'll take on the debt so you don't have to. Remember that? We're paying it. That's a lot of the inflation that's making things uncomfortable right now. And new this week, did you guys hear about the home equity tax they're starting to talk about? So it's not bad enough you pay property tax on the value of your home. Now the federal government, every year, you get to pay potentially pay an equity tax. Let's talk morality. Human trafficking has absolutely skyrocketed in this country, 700% in Ontario alone. I don't recall that ever being a thing growing up here. 17% of Canadians feel safe. I wonder why. How many of you, I love asking this question, how many of you remember leaving your keys in the ignition of your unlocked vehicle while you slept in your unlocked home all night long so you didn't lose your keys in the morning and you had no clue where the house key was? What happened? We didn't do this. When considering what sentence to give those who hurt our children? There's little ones in the room. I cleaned that up. Fill in the blanks. Judges are taking into account how their decision might affect that pervert's immigration status. We live in a country who doesn't care about our kids. And we're supposed to want to stay here. And we don't have the votes in Parliament or in the Senate or both combined to fix it, because it's not broken. So we've been exploring and considering our options. And the response and the reaction from the rest of Canada has been disappointing, to say the least. It started out with, remember this, you can't leave. Yeah, we can. Thank you, Quebec. Yeah, we can. So when they figured that out, that argument wasn't going to work, then they came at us with this one. Do you know what you'll be giving up? So I made a list. It's not an exhaustive list, but I made a list. Here we go. Tell me how I do. We will be giving up. Living under a government that delights in stifling our growth, caused numerous politically induced recessions, landlocked us through policy, regulates everything possible because that's the next best thing to nationalizing it, steals our money through taxation and then launders it to benefit themselves and their friends, believe in open borders so anyone can just walk in, and they do, unbelievable levels of Chinese interference in our political system, extortion being carried out by Indian gangs here in our borders and Alberta, by the way. Now we find out we've got Mexican drug cartels, all of which continues to destroy relationships with our largest trading partners. On top of that, we now have censorship laws, a gun buyback program, and a Supreme Court who just ruled that invoking the Emergencies Act was indeed unconstitutional, and all Ottawa did was an oops. That's what we're leaving. That's what we're leaving. But here's what we can gain. Because we'd no longer be under the Canada Health Act, we can finally have state-of-the-art health care with no wait times. And rather than us traveling to other countries to get the care we need because we can't get it here, Alberta could be a healthcare destination. That's pretty cool. Pension plans, by bringing them here in-house to the local level, we will have so much more control over where they are invested and how it's paid out. Not to mention anything that's left in. Why can't that go into your estate instead of the ether? Right? Speaking of the ether, how many of you have paid into EI that used to be called UI, but now apparently you're not allowed to call it that? You got to call it EI. How many of you paid in, never got a dime or very little back? Speaking of ether, you're getting some back now? Praise God. Like really, praise God. Well, for the rest of us that didn't, and it's our money, roll it into your pension. We could do that. We'd have a blank canvas. With our own police force, criminal code, and judges, crime would reduce dramatically. And I got ideas for those guys I talked about earlier. Capital goes where it's welcome. Alberta would be open for business. Our city centers would be vibrant again, and our small towns would come back to life. Right? No more of Ottawa dictating what we can and cannot do. You want to buy an EV? I want you to buy an EV. Please, by all means, go ahead. You want to buy a diesel? I hope you do, because somebody's going to have to pull that EV in the wintertime. And we will, because we're Albertans and we help one another, right? You want to buy solar panels? I want you to buy solar panels. My tax dollars are not going to subsidize your solar panels. The other thing that we could look forward to is no more supply management. We would actually have a free market. We would have safe streets. We would have work-life balance. We would have a solid future. And perhaps most importantly, we would have schools that focus on giving our children a real education rather than trying to turn them into little social justice warriors and convincing them there's something or someone they're not. The list goes on. We could go on all night about all the benefits that we would have. We know Canada is a sinking ship. We don't have the votes to fix it, guys. We don't. And we don't have to go down with it. Albertans have always been trailblazers. That's how we all got here. It's in our bones. It's what built this province. And so now it's time to blaze a trail of our own. And it's time to become the sovereign republic of Alberta. Bless you all. And although it takes definitely a lot of hours to travel from one end of this province to the other, you want to be careful what you're saying and who you're saying to, because you never know when your paths may cross again. Ben Trudeau and I met several years ago when I used to sit on the board here for the women's shelter, and I had this great big dream that I was going to build a new building. And someone said, "Oh, you need to talk to this land developer. His name is Ben Trudeau." And I said, "Come again?" Ben who? And they said, no, Kathy, it's okay. I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, no, go meet him. Well, my goodness, what a delight he was to work with. We didn't get to finish the project, but we sure did become very good friends after, and it's wonderful to be working on this project together now. So please welcome Ben Trudeau.
Thank you, Kathy. Yeah. Yes, I'm related, 13 generation back. So my family came here and on my mother's side in 1641, and on my dad's side, the Trudeau, in 1652. So we're 14 generation in the country. I'm related to Justin through our first ancestor in 1652. He had 6 boys and 5 girls. Justin's from the oldest one. I'm from the second one, and the third one became the first mayor of New Orleans. So, yeah. So I've been living in Alberta since 2008. Moved here in 2008. Started working here in 2007. One of my first friend, in Alberta, is here tonight, and I have a very funny story about his mom that I loved a lot, who just passed away recently. But it was I go to. He said, "You need to meet my mom." And then I go to their place, and she comes out of her house like a beautiful lady, white hair, beautiful smile, blue eyes, like come very like extend her hand, and then Brad tells her, "Here, Mom, I present you Mr. Trudeau." As soon as she heard that, she put her head down, turned around, went back in her house. Yeah, she was very fun. So I'm here to talk about. I do have an interesting background in politics. I've been raised in, and not because of my name, but because of my dad's business. My dad is a PR guy, speechwriter who wrote for all the premier of Quebec since the 60s and all the premiers of Canada except Stephen Harper. I was always involved in the backroom politics all my life since I'm little. I still have that memory of of my dad chatting with René Lévesque during the Montreal Olympics just before he became premier with all the flags. I was 4 years old holding my dad by the hand. And so I got involved in politics quite heavily at age 16 for the Provincial Liberal Party, which in Quebec is the equivalent of the Conservative. And in the Youth Liberals, it was during the Meech Lake Accord, and then that failed on June 23rd, 1987. And after that, we went in another round of negotiation for the Charlottetown Accord, which had a national referendum in 92. For that one, the youth branch of the Liberal Party, we all voted against it. And our leader, Premier Bourassa, used his veto in the party to shut down the youth vote. In reaction to that, we all left the party, about 2,000 young, and we created our own party in 1994, named the ADQ, Action Démocratique du Québec. I was in the first cohort of candidates. We had 75 candidates out of the 125 riding, and our leader was elected, the only one elected, but we gathered 7% of the vote of Quebec. And when Parizeau was elected, point one of the PQ program is to do independence. So when Parizeau became premier, despite he became premier with only something like 20,000 votes, it was very, very split, that election, so much that in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, they have to redo a by-election because both candidates got equal votes after everything, exactly the same number of votes. So they rerun the election. And that 7% brought us, the ADQ, the young party, founded 7 months before, in the discussion for the referendum with the PQ. And I at the time, and still now, I type about at the speed that people speak. So I was dragged in every meeting by my leader to take notes. And we had multiple meetings. I was 22 years old. He was 24. And here we are in meeting with Parizeau and Bouchard, carving the next question for the referendum. And that question, we were not separatist. Our position, which is the same position I have today, I never changed my constitutional position for Canada, never changed since I'm 16 years old. Our position was the 1995 questions, which is, do you give the mandate to the Premier to go negotiate a new deal with Canada, and if they don't want to negotiate, then we separate. That was a 1995 referendum question. We lost about 50,000 votes with 92% participation, and with 85,000 ballots rejected. So you can pull the conclusion that you want. But following that, the Chrétien government brought the question to court. And out of the judgment in 1998, they carved the Clarity Act in 2000, which describe the 7 ways that the country can prevent you to separate. And then the next day, the Quebec legislation voted against the Clarity Act. And that is to demonstrate our Quebec Act. So why am I here today? So I wrote a book recently because I I was dragging that discussion first within the UCP. I participated in a UCP event last June in Calgary. From that, I produced a first document. Michael was there as one of the speakers. And from that document, I said, okay, I believe that I need to do a bit more work to explain how Alberta can exert our sovereignty within the Constitution, because this is the solution that Quebec chose. This is why in Quebec the sovereignty movement seems to have fizzled down. It didn't fizzle down. It counterattacked by taking position within the Constitution of what the province can do. Few people know that Canada provinces has more liberty with our Constitution than any American state. So we have more freedom to control our economy. We have a freedom to control our own economy. We have the freedom to do our own deal. So Quebec right now have 53 foreign offices across the country. Quebec holds its own seats, not Canada. Quebec owns its own seat at the UN. Quebec negotiate all of their economic agreement according to our Constitution. Quebec collect its own tax according to our Constitution. Quebec control its own immigration according to our Constitution. Quebec decide not to filter all their legislation through the Crown, not according to our Constitution, but they don't complain, so why not? And when they do complain, and when they're right, like with Bill 101 that was passed in 1979, it's been so far, so we're 40, almost 50 years later, that law has been challenged by Supreme Court and voted against 4 times so far. And each time the court knocked down the provincial law, the province take back, change a couple of comma, and restart the process. Sue us again. It's not the same law. They had the 4th iteration of the law, changing so far something like 6 words total since version 1. And we're in the 6-10 years process at court. Quebec do first and ask forgiveness never. And what does the federal do? Nothing. Why? Because for most, 90% of what they do, it is constitutional. And then because they don't, because they know it, they just, Quebec are master in managing the Westminster system. Nobody in London can manage the Westminster system like a Quebecer. So Quebec is EI. EI is a federal program controlled by Quebec and Quebec. Like health, all the health program that the federal gives, when Quebec don't want to apply that program or that condition, they just don't. And not only do they don't, but then they go to Ottawa and say, you know what? You had planned to give 50 million to provide us that service. We don't want it from you, but give us the 50 million. And they receive it. Why? Because it's constitutional. Why don't we do the same? We can do the same. We are under the same constitution. We can do everything that Quebec does. And my heart goes for a sovereign Alberta. My heart goes for us to take the right that the Constitution gives us to do without a referendum, without crisis, without even Quebec, the same day that Alberta passed Bill 1 under the first law that Premier Smith brought in, the sovereign Alberta under a United Canada, which is window dressing because we already, like it was just to assert. Well, Bill 2, she added condition to get out of the Canada Pension Plan. Why do you do that? You bark, and then you say, don't worry, we'll leave you the money. So you bark, but you don't bite. Well, it needs to change. And that same day, that same morning, at the legislature in Quebec, they passed a law that from now on, they will not have royal assent anymore. That they don't need royal assent, that from that day on, the lieutenant governor is there to record what's happening there to Ottawa. And then after that, the week after, they put a for sale sign in front of the lieutenant governor's house saying we're not paying for her house anymore. Like Ottawa wants her here, let's pay for it, but we don't want to pay for that house. The day King Charles III was here to give his throne speech, While he was giving his throne speech at the legislature in Quebec, there was an unanimous vote within the 5 parties represented, speaking of splitting the vote, like 5 parties in Quebec at the legislature, and they all unanimously voted to kick the king out. And they wrote a letter, their law, and they served the king at the end of the speech. There was somebody in hand serving what just been voted, saying we don't want to do anything with the crown anymore. Quebec is not under their jurisdiction. What did Ottawa did? Exactly. Nothing. So this is what my book said. So the first part of that book speaks about the real constitutional history of Canada. How did we become a country? And how that country started in 1534, not in 1759. How did Quebec assert its constitutional right? And then I go into how can we assert our constitutional right? And then I go to a vision. I believe that what's missing in that movement is a vision. We need to know why are we doing it. Quebec in 76, when they came to power, the PQ, first thing that they've done, they write 12 white books. White books in the legislature is a long-term vision. So they wrote 12 white books. 6 of them were written by my dad. And these 12 white books still, as of today, direct the future of Quebec. They are the books that states that we're going to take control of our immigration, we're going to take control of this. You know that speaking of of pension fund, the pension plan of Quebec was started at the same time as the CPP, the Canadian Pension Fund. So when they started in 1965, I believe, Quebec decided we won't participate. We're going to create our own. Well, fast forward. The CPP right now has a fund, an investment fund of $700 billion with 22 million participants. Quebec have a provincial fund of $500 billion with 6 million participants. This is what the provincial pension fund does. And then Quebec as well, economically speaking, the other thing that they do, they are very, since 98, they say, okay, we won't separate. You want to pass stupid law, now in the Clarity Act. So the Clarity Act, by the way, it's a honey trap. So it says, okay, you can separate, but once you vote on a referendum, we're going to assess if there was enough people voting. Then we're going to assess if the people that vote really represent everybody. Is enough LGBTQ voted? Is enough First Nation voted? Is enough Mennonite voted? Is enough, like, they could do that. Then after that, it has to pass the Common, for which we have 35 representatives out of 238. After that, it has to pass the Senate. After that, it has to have a royal assent by the Governor General. So these are the conditions. There are 7 conditions to be met before they say, okay, you can separate. So we need to change our vision of how we want to do things. At the same token, I do encourage you to sign the petition right now. I know that we're separate from the petition involvement, but we need that referendum because we need that discussion. And we need to know exactly where people stand at this point to be able to take assertive decision. But the next step, what we need more than separation is sovereignty. And to get sovereignty, we need to know who we are and we need to know where we're going. We need to cast a vision that is better than, okay, you'll be able to pay yourself a 3rd steak a day because nowadays we're still the one that earns the most in this country, the less taxed, the youngest. So yes, we have reason to have a lot of concern about what is taken from us, but compared to other Canadians, they look at us like what are you complaining about? So it's not a question of comparing to them, it's a question of asserting our constitutional right, taking sovereignty, recognizing who are Albertan. I don't speak like an Albertan, but I am an Albertan. I married an Alberta girl from Edmonton who have 4 kids all born at the Greyhounds Hospital here in town. When I die, they won't fly back my body down to Quebec, no? I'm going to be buried here, that's for sure. So it's important as well to know what is an Albertan, what makes us different. So this is all that. This is what I talk in that book. I thought it was important to put it by writing, to say, oh, here's how we were created from London. This is how we evolved. This is how we can assert our sovereignty. This is a vision, what we could do that could encourage people to want us to be sovereign. And this is who we are as an Albertan. I developed 8 characteristics that make us Albertans, including myself. And I believe that we should, like in Quebec, control immigration through certain criteria. Like my sister comes from Vietnam. She was a boat people. We adopted her in 81. In 87, my dad paid for all her family to immigrate to Canada. They needed backers. And her dad and the rest of her family, when they show up at Immigration Quebec, they went through the first 5 days, orientation, who we are as Quebecers, what do we believe in, all that. At the end of the 5 days, they had to sign a contract that they would respect the values and that they would speak French. Well, my sister's dad didn't want to speak French. You know what happened? He moved to Ontario. He was not welcome in Quebec. He couldn't get a driver's license. He couldn't get health care. He didn't want to sign the contract. They wanted to become a Quebecer, so get out. Well, we should do the same. If you're not wanting to respect who is an Albertan, get out. All right, I think I took a lot of time. The next speaker is my very good friend. We became good friends through these crazy times, and like a lot of others. But Chris is really an example of conviction and what we have to be willing to do for convictions. So, my good friend, Chris Scott.
Okay, Ben took all my time, so good night. Just kidding. I do have to correct you, though, Ben. I was never actually convicted. Yeah. Well, thank you all for coming out. It's wonderful to see all of the seats filled, and we had to put out more seats. That's fantastic. That tells me that Albertans are, at the very least, wanting to have discussions. Albertans want to talk about their future. And I believe that's probably because most of you are aware that we have a very important question that's about to be asked of us in October, right? Does anybody not know what the question is that's going to be asked of Albertans in October? So the question that's going to be asked of Albertans, assuming that the current Citizens Initiative petition is successful, the question is something like, similar to, do you agree that Alberta should cease to be a province of Canada and become an independent state? That is a very heavy question, right? That question, regardless of the way it's answered, is going to affect the future of every man, woman, child, and pet in Alberta for the foreseeable future. Many of you in this room, you're aged, and you might not see, you know what I'm saying, right? You might not see the fruits of either consequence to that question. You might not. I might not. I'm 47. Am I 47? My mom's going to phone me right away and tell me. I'm 46. I'm 46 years old, and I might not see it. But you know who's going to see it and feel it is my kids, for sure. And any adult, any parent, grandparent, or even any, if you don't have kids, you know people that do and you care about kids, you know that the things that we do and the choices that we make now must consider the future of our kids. What is it going to look like for our kids? So when I've been involved in this conversation for about 5 years or so. I've traveled from one end of the province to the next, speaking about Alberta independence, speaking about the merits and benefits of an independent Alberta. And I do that because, well, I don't think there's anything more important to do when it comes to civics, right? We go and we vote in elections and we participate in campaigns and those types of things, and that kind of affects the future for the next 4 years, and then we do it all over again, and it might be something different, right? How much more important is it to answer a question about the future of Alberta, about Alberta sovereignty. Are we going to choose to grow up, take our birthright, start making our own choices, acting like adults, or are we going to continue with the status quo? So because that question's so heavy, and because I care about my future, and more in particular my kids' future, I've decided to, along with my team, travel across Alberta and talk to as many people as we can. I want to, of course, we want to share our opinion and our ideas about what Alberta should be, what Alberta could be. And more important than that, we want to hear from you folks. You know, what your questions are, what your concerns are. Some of you might be opposed to this idea. And this is a place for you to share those concerns. Before we do that, I do like to take some time to explain why I believe this is so important. Right now in Alberta, as an Albertan, do you feel as though you are respected in this confederation? For those who agree, put up your hand. No, that's really going to put you on the spot. Those who do not agree that Albertans are respected in confederation, please raise your hand. Okay. That's a trick question. Yeah. Well, it sounded kind of tricky, didn't it? A referendum question was put to the people of Alberta when my good, close friend Jason was the premier. And the referendum question was, do you agree that we should end equalization? And 62.5 or 0.8% of Albertans said yes. Now, how many people in this room answered yes to that question? Most of us. What's happened? Nothing. Why? Why did nothing happen? He's a crook. Nothing happened because that question had no teeth. Nothing happened because that question was a political stunt to appease you and to appease me. And it largely worked because we're fairly ignorant when it comes to politics and civics, right? On the whole, Albertans don't really know what's going on with politics for the most part, except for that's really changed in the last few years thanks to the tireless work of groups of people. The reason why nothing happened when Alberta voted very much in favor to end equalization is because it was never intended to have an outcome of action. The question was meant to just placate you. Hey, promise made, promise kept, I gave you the referendum. Well, I really want to change that. I actually want Alberta to take control of immigration. Some of the other questions that are going to be put to referendum this fall are regarding immigration. Do you want Alberta to take control of immigration? Do you agree that, well, it was rhetorical, but thank you for answering. So there's some questions on whether or not we should allow people to immigrate to Alberta and immediately receive benefits as Albertans. Those types of questions. And, as much as I appreciate when government bothers to ask the people what they want, and that's really what a referendum is, it also frustrates me knowing that just like the equalization referendum that we experienced during the Kenney regime, this referendum on the questions of immigration is much the same. When we go to the polls in October and we tell the government that, yes, we want you to do these things, the outcome will be nothing. It will be nothing. And the technical reason behind that is because even if 100% of Albertans said we want an Alberta Immigration Department, yes, we could do that, by the way, under the Constitution. Immigration is a shared jurisdiction between the federal government and the provincial government. We could do that. We could do what Quebec does and say, you don't want to sign our contract and agree to abide by our values and our rules, get out. We could do that. The problem is the federal government doesn't seem to care who comes to the country. And this is not to say immigrants are bad. It's to say that when people come to a country, they should more or less align with the values and the morals of that country, because if they don't, you eventually don't have that country anymore. And I believe that what we have in the West is, thank you, what we have in the West is worth protecting. I mean, the West has built something where people from all over the world sacrifice for years and years and years and work tirelessly, get on a boat or a plane or whatever, and they come here to start a new life. That means that what we have here is worth something. It's valuable, and we must protect that. If we allow people who don't agree with that that want that to change, that want it to more reflect the places people flee from, and we bring too many of those people in, that's what we will become. It's common sense. It's not racism. It's not any other ism. It's just a fact. That's the way it is. So let's just pretend for a moment that Alberta wants to protect the values and the freedoms that make this a place people want to come to. And we say, we're going to make sure that everyone who comes here aligns with our values. The rest of the country doesn't do that. We have this amazing piece of paper called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Don't get me started on that one, as a guy that's been arrested for protesting. But we have this Charter of Rights and Freedoms that guarantees Canadian citizens mobility rights. Canadian citizens are guaranteed mobility rights within the country. That means we can go province to province and nobody can stop us because we're Canadian citizens. So what happens when Ontario brings in another 1 million immigrants that do not share our values and gives them Canadian citizenship? What can the Alberta Immigration Department do? Nothing. So when the Premier, who, by the way, is an extremely intelligent person, she has a very strong background in politics and political science, she knows these things, when she says to you, Alberta, do you want to take control of your immigration? What is she asking you? She is asking you, Alberta, do you want to be sovereign? That's the question. And the question of sovereignty, if that's something you want, you don't mess around playing political whatever it is, beating around the bush, you do it. That's why this question is so important. All of the things that I've seen our government kind of dangle in front of us, the pension plan, the police force, immigration department, those types of things, taxation, by the way, and Alberta Revenue Agency, all of those things, when Alberta says, yes, we want those things because it will be better here, what Albertans are saying is, yes, I want an independent Alberta. That's what the real answer is. All of the other things around it are fluff. They mean very little, because if we just answer those questions and we beat around the bush of Alberta sovereignty, we're wasting our time and nothing will change. That's why these town halls are so important, because I guarantee you that there may be many of you sitting here today that, like me, love this country. As rough as it's been, and how much I've realized it's not what I believed, I still love this country. I have this emotional attachment to it. And my emotional attachment to it says, I want to fight and do everything I can to fix this so that we can stay together and have everyone agree on it. But after almost 6 years in this, I have come to the depressing conclusion that that is not possible. It's just not. It is possible for Alberta to stand up, stand against what's happening with the rest of the country right now, and encourage the rest of Canada to finally smarten up. That's possible, for sure. It's not possible if we let our emotions cloud our judgment. And we've seen some very visceral manifestations of emotion throughout this, the petition campaign that's occurring, haven't we? We have seen people like having the most irrational responses to people participating in democracy, fighting them. Somebody in Edmonton, they literally beat up one of those volunteers. We've seen people swerving their cars at volunteers. We've seen them shouting and calling them traitors and discussing human beings and that they should hang. People tell me I should hang for my opinion. I have a comeback for that, but it's not child appropriate. But the responses and what we're seeing from those opposed to an independent Alberta are so emotional. They're so emotional that they can't separate their emotions from the facts. They can't separate the facts from their feelings and see the forest for the trees. Every single argument that I've heard so far against the idea of an independent Alberta, and I'm going to challenge you to try and stump me here, folks, I've been able to turn that around and explain exactly why that's a reason we need to be independent. Oh, we're going to be landlocked. We're landlocked now. Let's get unpolicy locked so we can finally negotiate the access like adults, right? Oh, well, what are we going to do for currency? What do we do for currency now? Our government prints twice as much money, the value of our dollar drops by 50%, and there's not a damn thing we can do about it because we don't have the voice powerful enough to change federal monetary policy. Well, what are we going to do about the military? Are you happy with the way our military is right now? If not, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. If you want to fix the things that are wrong with this country, you cannot. Not as an Albertan. Not ever. And not because it's broken. It's because it's exactly the way it was intended to be. That's why Alberta and Saskatchewan were legislated into existence. And we didn't get a referendum. We didn't get a choice. That's why the Constitution has the imbalance of power that we see in the Senate and the Supreme Court and House of Commons. That's why when Clifford Sifton said, we desire and all Canadian patriots desire the great trade of the prairies, benefit us in the East, and build up our factories and places of work, he wasn't lying. He did not say, we desire and all Canadian patriots desire that this great dominion work together and everyone has a seat at the table and we chart our course into the future together. He said, we want your stuff. And it's never changed. That's the way it's supposed to be. So I'm sorry if you have this idea that we can change things and fix things with a constitutional amendment or with electing Pierre Poilievre to the Conservative leadership and then electing him as Prime Minister. No Prime Minister in the history of the Dominion of Canada has ever done anything to right the imbalance of power between East and West. And the reason for that, it was not an accident, it's intentional. The business of federal politics does not allow a Prime Minister or parliamentarians to change that balance, period. If you think I'm wrong, I want to hear from you. I want to hear a plausible and probable path to Alberta's sovereignty in the way we need it to control the things that need to be controlled so we can maintain our way of life here. If you have that, I want to hear it. If you're opposed to what I'm saying, I want to hear it. If you believe there's a reason why Alberta shouldn't or can't be independent, I want to hear it. If you have an emotional argument for maintaining this relationship with Canada, I'll hear it, but it won't hold any weight with me. It won't. Maybe when I was 20 years younger, 5 years younger, I made decisions that were based on my emotions. I've done that. Every older person in this crowd has done that when they were younger. We watch the younger generation making emotional decisions right now and we're like, did we drop you on your head or something? Like, how can you do this? And then we remember that we were exactly the same way. At some point, we have to grow up and we have to stop letting our emotions be our guide. We have to stop following our heart and we have to start following our brain because your heart will deceive you. And it will deceive you to the point where you sacrifice your children's future for a warm, fuzzy feeling. Or to prevent you from becoming the object of people's anger. That's called fear. The reason that I say Alberta independence is necessary and inevitable, even though I don't know, there's no metric right now that shows we have a majority, is because I know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the very intelligent people of this province, when it comes to their secret ballot, when nobody else is looking, there's no live streams, there's no town hall, it's just them, and they're standing at the ballot box looking at the question, do you agree that Alberta should cease to be a province in Canada and become an independent state? They will look at that and they have a chance to act without those emotions in the way, without the fear of what their neighbors will say. And they can agree to that. And they can go on with their lives, nobody ever knowing that they agreed. Because many people don't want to face the public pressure and scorn and resentment that we do. And we see that every day. I believe the closet separatists are going to be the ones that win this. So with that said, I think I'm just going to stop talking now so that we have more time for your questions and your concerns, because that's what's really important here. I meant to cut the speaking a little bit shorter today. We're never successful at that, and I appreciate your patience. If you have a question, don't be shy. Be bold. It's time that we started, not yet, just wait a minute. It's time that we start to be more bold about the things that we believe in, about the things that we know are true, because our meekness and our fear of what other people think have got us in this situation. We can't do that anymore. If not for us, we got to start being bold for our kids. So thank you very much. We're gonna take I'll let Shane say something too, but we're gonna take a 5-minute break. Stretch your legs. Please drink all that coffee. Eat all those cookies. They're calorie free. No, they're not, but just pretend. And 5 minutes, we'll come back and we'll get to the question and answer. And now, something that you'll really enjoy.
I just wanted to let you know, when we start the questions, we are going to line up behind Sandy here in the center, and we're going to put the line down here. It's too much to go run around, so we're going to get you to sign. She will not give up the mic. And please limit it to a question, not a statement. We want to hear as many questions as possible. If you have a statement or a story, please leave that till afterwards, and we'll be around. You can come tell us all that at that time.
Yes.
I have an important public service announcement, everybody. Important public service announcement. Can I have your attention, please? Yes, you. There are more coffee cups. That is all. Okay, folks, we're going to start the Q&A, so if you could bring it down to a soft, silent murmur, that would be appreciated.
Okay. I'm just going to ask the first question on behalf of someone in the audience, and the question is, what happens to the First Nations and their treaties in an independent Alberta?
This is only opinion, because I'm not a signatory to the treaties. It is my opinion that it's the signatories that decide the future of those treaties, right? In my opinion, I believe that Alberta independence would benefit our First Nations brothers and sisters even more than us. Because if you look at the situation that they're in right now, if you look at the statistics, it's absolutely horrendous. And I would argue that there needs to be a substantial change and that it really can only get better from here. That's my opinion on the subject.
Does that answer? Is that good? Okay, thank you.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for being here, you guys. When you were talking about the Constitution and how it was changed in 82, basically, or no, well, even first Trudeau did some things about the Constitution too, I think. Okay, yeah, okay. Sorry, I will speak louder. It's about the Constitution, about how it was changed by the Trudeau, not this Trudeau, but the other one. Yeah, Trudeau number one. So, say Alberta gets independence. How to stop an arbitrary change, because that's basically what he did. He did an arbitrary change without really the notice of the Canadian people, in my eyes, from what you said. So how can we stop that from going, once an Alberta Constitution is worked out, or we work it out beforehand, how do we stop something like that happening in the future?
Before I turn this over to Dr. Wagner, I just want to mention that it wasn't just arbitrary. There was like 18 months of negotiations with the premiers. They weren't going to sign. The only reason why the 8 holdouts signed was because the notwithstanding clause was included. If that hadn't happened, the negotiations would have continued. So it was a process, and it wasn't a process where everybody was happy right off the bat. There was some serious concessions that had to be made for it to be adopted. So there is that. This is a part of a larger question on what is the opportunity we're looking at. The opportunity we're looking at isn't about getting a pipeline. It's not about, well, it is kind of. It's not so much about taking control of immigration or money or anything like that. It's the opportunity to do something that's never been done before in Canada. And that is where the people actually decide what their constitution looks like. We never did that. It was the British House of Lords that wrote the British North America Act and imposed that through British Parliament on the Dominion of Canada. They said, this is how you're going to be governed. We didn't decide. Now, when people create a nation, they are the ones that are supposed to decide, because it's us that are affected by those things. It's us that are affected by the laws. So we're supposed to tell the government how they may act, not the other way around. And that's the opportunity. So if you're asking, how do we go into a new nation of Alberta and make sure it doesn't turn into something we see right now? We make sure that our Constitution reflects the very best pieces of every other Constitution around the world, and people are working on that right now, by the way. We see what worked. We see what doesn't work. We talk about it. That's why this is called Let's Talk Alberta, because that document is going to set the stage for the success that Alberta can have going into the future. We can deal with things like, you want to prevent government corruption? I can't even say the word. Constitutionally enshrine protections against it. You want to protect your currency? Constitutionally enshrine protections. You want to have a robust military that swears an oath to the people? Constitutionally enshrine the protections. That's really how we do it. It's by being involved, talking about it, and then doing something that's never been done before for everyone's future. Michael, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, just really quickly, my impression would be that if we become independent, in writing the new constitution, there'll be a vote on the new constitution whether to accept it or not. That'd be one way of blocking it. The other kind of more general comment is the way things are in Alberta right now, if we don't like what the federal government's doing, we vote for another party and it makes no difference because Eastern Canada has voted against us. When we're independent, our leaders are going to do what we want or we're voting them out. There won't be a block of votes somewhere else that are going to keep them in power. We're going to vote them out. So we will have the voting power when we're independent, and so we can form the kind of country we want.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thanks for clearing up my misunderstanding. So thank you so much.
And
Okay.
yeah, and I just want to add that Quebec never signed that constitution, that René Lévesque was sent to bed at 9 p.m. that night, and Premier Brian Pickford, who I know is quite loved in the freedom movement for recent action, is mainly responsible for the disaster we're in, so I'm not a big fan of him. And what he's done, he went to the kitchen with Jean Chrétien, cut a deal, and they passed the patriation without Quebec. René Lévesque discovered that all the premier decided to vote on while he was sleeping during his breakfast, reading the newspaper. It was called the Night of the Long Knife, to refer of what Adolf Hitler did with his generals 50 years before.
Here's some interesting history that you might appreciate. Ben, after that happened, what did Quebec do? How many times did Quebec use the notwithstanding clause to say we're not going to listen to your laws, federal government?
So from the time the Constitution was patriated until the time the PQ was there, Quebec used over 1,500 times the notwithstanding clause, and blanket the notwithstanding clause of all the existing law, including the dog law in the parks and all that. Everything was passed with the notwithstanding clause until 1985.
Testing 1, 2. Yeah. Good. Okay. Well, you're going to hang on to it for me. Okay. Thank you very much. Chris, perhaps this is a question for you and perhaps everybody here. Do you believe that the RCMP in Alberta have the best interests of the people of Alberta, knowing that they in fact, even right up at the very top in any office in Alberta, take all their marching orders from Ottawa?
I believe that the men and women in the RCMP do. I believe that nobody signs up for that job unless they want to serve. Like, that is a crappy job. So I believe that. I believe that people are fantastic, for the most part. It is true that there are some bullies. There's some dinks in the RCMP that really don't care and they just want to be bullies. But for the most part, I believe that the people are good people. The institution, it's part of the executive branch of government, and the executive branch of government is the Crown's, right? We don't, in Canada, in Alberta, in Canada, we actually don't have an authority that's responsible for protecting the rights of the individual. That's not a thing. We have executive branch of government that's responsible for protecting government. They swear an oath of allegiance to the Crown, not to the people of Alberta. And that's something that needs to be remedied. However, I do want to point out that the RCMP in each province are under the direction of the province. They don't take their marching orders from Ottawa. Ottawa can say things, and Ottawa has RCMP that have jurisdiction across the country for some things, but it's our provincial government that actually gives the directions. That's why Daniel Smith could say, we're going to tell the RCMP not to enforce the gun grab, because it's the province. The province contracts the RCMP, right?
Can I just add, though, that the problem I do have with the RCMP in this province is that to be a commanding officer, they need to be bilingual because they're federal. So all the high-ranked are mostly Quebecers who don't give a crap about Albertan. I don't trust the RCMP with a 10-foot pole. In Quebec, they have zero power. They're like the FBI, so they're there to intervene when the provincial police is involved in a shooting, something like that. Is the RCMP that investigate the provincial police. The RCMP costs me a lot of money moving here because in Quebec you can race with the RCMP cars and they cannot give you a ticket, and they do here. So I know that the first few months I had a couple of surprises because I was not slowing down looking at the RCMP car coming my way. So anyway, yeah.
Well, thank you all for making an effort here on this tonight, and I really appreciate it. But just one last comment there is that I recently spoke with a gentleman who's the top guy in the RCMP in our community, and when I asked him that direct question, why he is choosing not to deal with situations in our community, he said because he has no power to do so, and all his directives come right from Ottawa. And he went into great detail about and this is the top guy, okay? So he went into great detail about how he had to get all directions from Ottawa before he could even deal with anything.
I'd like to meet him.
He also told me that when I suggested maybe he look into Alberta independence and maybe become a peace officer, he told me that he's got 8 more years and he wants to get his pension.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that because there's a lot of people like that, right? There's people that are federally employed working in Alberta that are getting close to a pension. And I just want to say, in independent Alberta, we're going to need those people to do those jobs. So why would we not offer them their jobs and continue or buy the pension or something like that, right? We don't want to leave anybody behind. We want to have prosperity for everybody. So I would suggest let them know that there are many people advocating that things like that are dealt with and they don't lose what they've earned over their lifetime.
Can I just say, sorry? Oh. So just one thing on the RCMP. When I was a kid, the RCMP were like venerated. Like they were like amazing guys. The RCMP has changed. Like it used to be something to be proud of as Canadians. That was part of our identity was the RCMP. And it's a different organization now. But it was something we used to be able to be proud of.
This question is not mine, but for many cotton toppers here. OAS and CPP, how can Alberta do a much better job?
Well, the bar is pretty low, so it won't be hard. I had to kind of laugh a little bit today. Actually, I was doom scrolling, and there was an ad from CPP absolutely praising the thought that it had gone up X amount of %, and you see these 2 people on the ad celebrating, and I thought, you didn't see that on your check, dum-dum. Like, that's not how this works. We have nowhere to go but up with regards to the CPP. Even if the federal government said, we're not giving you $1 out of that CPP that's there right now, with the population that we have, we could still manage. Because it's like anything else, right? It's always the younger generations are paying for the older in this case. And because we are still predominantly younger generation here, we would be okay. We're gonna be just fine. Not only is that part going to be just fine, we will be able to protect that pension so that it is not turned into an asset, like what the CPPIB just did, so that it is not spent on things that we don't want it to be spent on, like, say, wars and things like that. right? Yeah. Yeah, Indian students coming here, and we're paying for them. I don't understand that when we've got enough kids here that need a college and a university education. The other thing with OAS, if we still discover that with the economy that we have, we need that top up, we will top it up. You got to think that once we're no longer subsidizing the rest of Canada, that works out to $5,000 per person per year, not taxpayer. Per person per year that stays right here in our province. That money can be rolled into OAS. It can be rolled into that pension plan. It can be rolled in. That's a lot of money. So we can roll that into all sorts of things. And the long and short of it is Chris stole my line, in that we won't leave anybody behind. That's not how we work. That's not how we work as Albertans. We make sure that everybody is looked after and cared for. The other thing, when somebody comes and asks you about their pension, oh, I don't want to lose my pension. Well, are you okay with your pension paying the president and CEO of said pension $6 million a year while you're struggling to pay your rent on that pension? Are you okay with that? Are you okay with the fact that all of our young ones who are struggling to not just get a job but keep a job pay 2 times every 2 weeks towards that pension? Because Ottawa screwed so much of that money out of there that there's not enough. That's how much they've lost. So to bring that right home, we will have control over it. We'll know where it's going. We'll know who is managing those dollars, because it will be here. It won't be a bunch of offices all the way around the world. And if we determine that OAS is still required, we'll make sure it's there.
I just want to say that we can do that tomorrow to the Alberta pension plan. It's only a letter to be signed. Well, not anymore, because Bill 2 said that now we need a referendum, which is, I don't know who else can add condition on a contract that is not needed, but that's another question. No, like the other thing about the Caisse de dépôt is that they have a mandate to do Canadian investment, which means that right now, Caisse de dépôt and Placement du Québec owns here in Alberta over 10 billion of assets. They own the Cross Iron Mill, it's the Quebec pension plan. Here, the Edmonton outlet at the airport where the Costco is on, this is the Quebec pension plan. So Quebec owns more assets in Alberta than the government of Alberta.
Hi, everyone. First, I want to thank you all for your bravery. I used up the bulk of my public-facing bravery during the pandemic. I was out there and tired of being spat on. Anyway, I have a question regarding the monarchy, which I don't want to be part of. Hopefully nobody does. What is the plan for that? Because I don't want our civil servants, our parliamentarians, our police force, our military, I don't want any of them swearing allegiance to some faraway crown. I want them swearing allegiance to us. And if you need somebody to help you develop an Alberta Armed Forces, I got a guy.
Like, I think this comes down again to the writing of the Constitution. Like, Alberta as an independent country will write its own Constitution. And so we'll have the opportunity then, for people to submit their ideas, and we'll get to vote on what our Constitution will be, and those kinds of issues will be dealt with in the Constitution. Because it's a constitutional issue. Right now, the swearing of the oath to the Crown is in Canada's Constitution. So when we get a new Constitution, then there'll be a discussion about whether we'll have that or not. And it seems to me the majority of people I've heard from would be against having the monarchy right now. So, but that again, it'll be something we'll get to vote on that as Albertans. So it won't be a decision by somebody else who gets to make that decision. It'll be us as citizens of Alberta who'll decide that. So.
And nobody in Quebec has to swear allegiance to the Crown since 2022. Provincial law passed on December, the same day we passed the Sovereignty Act here. Quebec passed a law that nobody in Quebec pay allegiance to the Crown anymore. Hasn't been contested despite being unconstitutional.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm going to be popular. I'm actually a Bill 1 person. I believe in united Alberta, sovereign Alberta within a united Canada, but I also believe that that leads to a Quebec 2.0, which we've totally messed up on as Albertans, which then leads to us leaving if they screw up. So I just want to make that position clear. By the way, I am going to be a canvasser. I am a canvasser. I've got votes. Okay, I think it's absolutely important that we do this, but there are some major issues that I have right now that I'd like to bring up. You talked about the Constitution, and what is the time frame that people think that it's going to take? Let's say we take the referendum. What's a time frame between when the referendum is won and when we actually have a constitution and we've actually done the governance, operations, and messaging requirements that all governments need to have in place before they can operate?
No, go ahead. No, you better.
I don't know either.
I get this.
1 year. I've heard 1 year. I think it's 3 to 5 years, but I've heard 1 year, and I'm looking at what the amount of work needs to be done. So go ahead, please.
Anybody that's giving you a timeline, they're just guessing, and I'm just guessing too. I would say that what I do know for sure is that the higher percentage we get of Albertans who vote to become independent, the quicker the negotiations will go. That's very obvious, right? So if you wanted to go quickly, well, maybe we should get to work talking to our friends and neighbors. The other thing I want to mention is, of all the people that are involved with the independence movement, I'm probably one of the newest, least educated, and least informed. And I kind of know some things. I say that not to diminish myself, but I want to let you folks know that there are some people who are very, very intelligent. They know what they're doing, and they're working on these things as we speak. As a matter of fact, a friend of mine is working on a project in which all of these things are outlined in a paper, so that when the time comes, that paper goes straight to Danielle, and it's like, this is what we need to do, and we need to do it now. In addition, Quebec has been working on this for how many decades, Ben? 4?
1965, 60 years.
60 years. Quebec is working on this 60 years. In the middle of last year, Mr. Plamondon came from Quebec, and he met with my good friend, Dr. Dennis Modry, and my lawyer, Jeff Rath, and he handed them the Quebec Separatist Bible. All of the things that Quebec has been working on that they know they have to do when the time comes, we have that. And this is 60 years of stuff. So this is not just a whim, a fly-by-night thing. This is a group of very dedicated, intelligent people that are contemplating exactly the things that you're asking, and they're making the plan, because in my opinion, when we have that referendum on October 19th, I want a declaration in January. That's my timeline. Now, whether we get that or not depends on the work that Albertans do and how we advocate for the position that we want to take in Alberta's future. But it is being done.
Can I just address your Bill 1 issue? Like, I think most Albertans would prefer to have a situation where we get our voice heard within Canada. Like, I think you get a big majority of people saying, let's stay within Canada, and they listen to our voice. Like, I do think that would be the issue. But the reason I don't agree with that anymore is I think we've been trying to do that for a very long time. Like, my big examples are the Reform Party of Canada, which was formed in 1987 with the slogan, "The West wants in." Instead of separating from Canada, let's vote our guys into Ottawa and tell them what we want to have, the reforms we want, so they could change Canada for us. So we voted for those guys. We sent overwhelmingly Reform Party MPs throughout the 90s to Ottawa. And what did Ottawa do? Just dismiss them as a bunch of, regionalists. They don't want to listen to them. Westerners, like, who cares? We don't care that you want in. We don't care about the changes you want. We worked very hard for years, for decades, thousands of people. Also, the Senate reform movement. We tried to get a Triple E Senate for decades. We had people doing the same thing. We want a Triple E Senate so we can get our province equally represented in the Senate. And what did the East do? Nope, there's no way. We're not going to change this. So we have tried very, very hard for several decades, for 50 years, to change this country, and they're not going to change. We got to get out. They're not going to, like, even if we vote our own self-sovereignty, they're not going to listen to us. We got to get out.
So, Chris, I just want to thank you for that, because that's the kind of things we need to know for people like me who are looking at this in a more complex way. Kathy, you're an awesome lady, and I love the way you present and what you present, but the simplicity of it misses many times what I'm concerned about. So some of that, I heard at the Rebel, remember the Rebel? You were there. At the Rebel, they have 3,000-page document that the Rebel was looking at. Did they ever find that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So I want to go to the next one. Governance has to do with legal framework. We have Bill C9, Bill 103, C4, a bunch of real crappy bills out there. What's the process of that happening? And again, if we're talking about this 1 year thing, I'm looking at, you said we have smart people doing that. Would that be Davies? What is happening there as far as how quickly would the governance, the legal framework in Canada change?
Well, the legal framework, and Dr. Wagner will correct me if I'm wrong, the legal framework is based on the Constitution. That's the first thing that needs to happen. Declaration of Independence, Constitutional Convention, Constitution. That outlines all of those things. You mentioned C8 and a few other federal bills. C9. So C9 and C8, C9 just passed, by the way, yesterday. It passed. And thank God we have a premier in this province right now with some common sense, and she will just say no. She's already said that she will use the Bill 1 to shield Albertans from intrusive federal legislation. I anticipate that that would be used to protect Albertans against those pieces of legislation as well. However, much like the federal gun grab that she said she's going to not direct the RCMP to enforce, a lot of these things, the province can say we're not going to enforce it, but if we're doing these things, we become criminals. And then now our passports are in jeopardy, and all sorts of things, our mobility rights are in jeopardy in other provinces. So it's not a perfect shield. It maybe will buy some time, but the only thing that will shield Albertans against this type of tyrannical, oppressive legislation from the federal government is full independence, full sovereignty, full stop. I'll take your other question after.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike. I have a question. I see that this is a great citizens initiative, and it has to be that way. And come October, when I believe we'll get to that stage, we'll complete the first petition stage and reach the referendum stage, and we'll have that vote, and we'll learn the result. And either way it goes, I imagine there's plan Bs and Cs and Ds lined up, and for the citizen side, and also to push on the provincial government to take some steps, like kind of like a two-prong approach. And I know back in the early 2000s there was huge emphasis, I know someone referenced it earlier, with the Reform Party and the firewall letter to the 5 points for Alberta autonomy. And do you think, my question is, like, timing wise, like, you think the premier is waiting until after October to, as Ben says, we can just do things, we could bring the CPP in-house in Alberta and do an APP for the Alberta pension plan, and we can collect our own provincial taxes and bring that in-house, and then police force? Do you think she's waiting for a vote to come in to take that action, or will that be too close to the next election that she doesn't want to jinx things? So, like, I know the citizens, we are going to do what we can to, I don't know, get the independence movement where we want it to be. But I was just wondering what your thoughts on, like, plan Bs and Cs and the strategy around that.
When Premier Smith was asked very bluntly, why don't you just govern on principle and legislate an Alberta pension plan because you know it's the right thing to do, and she knows it's the right thing to do. She's seen the math, it's just math. She said, I don't want to be a tyrant. I want to do what the people want, the will of the people. So if you guys want an Alberta pension plan, get to work and get the referendum, and we'll get a pension plan. So in one way, she's doing what we all want in that she's asking us and she's saying she wants to go with the will of the people. On the other hand, she's not being bold that we want to see in a politician and do the right thing. So, you know, I wish that she had just said, these are the things we're going to do. She knows what the firewall letter is. She knows those 5 points. She knows that Alberta needs it, but she won't do it until Alberta gives her a mandate to do it. When she was elected, she got the mandate. She campaigned on the Sovereignty Act within United Canada. She got that mandate. That's what she's trying to do now, and she's been very clear. And she's also been very clear that if the mandate changes through citizen initiative or things like that, that she will get in front of that mandate and execute, not execute, that's a really bad word. She will implement, yeah, the will of the people. So does that answer the question, or did I miss something?
Yeah, and I was just, do you think come October, once everything gets settled, that she'll take that action to like kind of bring, do you think there's enough time between then and the next election to, because I know for like, to have our own tax collection, we had to give like 12 months notice, I think, to the federal government for, I don't know, the whole transition and everything. Do you think there'll be enough time? Because I think Albertans will re-elect her in the next election, but if she does it and then for some crazy reason something else happens, the other government could rescind that. So do you think she would have time to do things after October?
There's going to be 2 outcomes to this referendum. We're either going to get it or we're not, right? That's the long and short of it. Where the trouble could happen, potentially, is if we don't get it by a lot, right? We want to send that message that we are done. We're done. We're done talking to you. We're done trying to negotiate. Doesn't work. We're out of here. So if we can achieve that, I don't know the Premier personally or anything. I can't speak for her, but it seems to me that it would make sense then that she can take from that it is time to implement that firewall on our way out the door, right? As a means of protecting us. So that could happen. If that referendum passes by just a little bit, enough to get us going, but not quite the numbers that I'd like to see necessarily, she might implement a little bit of it, right? As we are on our way out the door, and maybe even as a way to kind of appease people and go, well, look, we don't actually have to do this. I mean, we won't let her get away with that, but I could see her trying to do that. Then the third option is if the referendum fails, pack your bags, darling. Pack your bags. There's nothing left after that. And I'm not even being sarcastic. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for just the privilege of hearing all of you out. I'm going to try to formulate a question. I have a lot of questions, but don't really know how to summate everything in a short, succinct way. And I just want to say that I feel like an outsider. I feel like I'm in good company here because Albertans are pretty hardy people. Originally, I'm from Ontario, and like you, Mr. Trudeau, I've been here since 2008, and I'm a little bit outside of my scope of understanding fully what's going on.
You're where you're supposed to be.
Well, thank you. I feel torn because I hope that I'm not here at the time that you guys go to vote, only because like I was invited here by a dear friend. Both of us served together in uniform, and both of us have dealt with some pretty crazy life circumstances, and my transition back to Ontario has been significantly delayed because of complications with my mother, whose health took a sudden turn at the time of my forced release from the military. And so that's kind of the premise of, I was invited by the same friend here to a town hall with Danielle Smith, and had the privilege of standing up. I only had 45 seconds to speak, so I guess what's really on my heart is if my family wasn't all in Ontario, I love Alberta. I've been here since 2008, and I love this province. Born in Toronto, I can't stand some of the politicians that represent our government. Some of my forefathers wrote the earliest laws here in Canada, and I just want to challenge people to go back to what you shared, and Ben Crane, thank you. And I want to do this unapologetically, reading out 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray, and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. I don't think that the change is possible with sudden dramatic changes, and I'm not for or against separation. Like, it's kind of exciting to think that Alberta could be separated from Canada. However, it's a little heartbreaking to me because I know that I'm going back to Ontario, and it's a disaster there, like a complete disaster. Similar to what Kelsey said, when my mom contacted Peter MacKay when he was the Minister of National Defense, his office said, we write the policy, we don't enforce it. So without enforcement, we can write legislation, we can write policy, we can draft as much as we want on paper without the enforcement and without the authority and the jurisdiction. There's no power behind these laws and these endeavors to make dramatic changes. It is institutional and at the core that these changes need to occur. And whether Alberta separates or stays as a part of Canada, obviously, has little to do with me, but I just want to implore all Canadians to be prayerful about the steps that we take as individual provinces as well as a country. And I know you said to make it a question, but I think what you said, Ben Crane, is the most important fundamental thing that we need to hold on to, godly, righteous principles, and pray for righteous leaders to rise up. And I don't think that it was by chance that, and I'm gonna probably say his name wrong because somebody corrected me earlier, but Poilievre, I don't think that it was by chance that he was ousted in Ottawa, and like that he won and I'm drawing a blank because I'm a little bit nervous, but with the Battleford region, that he won that riding here in Alberta. And I guess to make this a question, I question, without knowing very much about this whole initiative of separating from Canada, how that would affect his position as the Conservative leader. So hopefully I didn't overspeak.
No, I appreciate your candor, yeah. I appreciate your guts to get up and say that. And I really see this is my personal opinion. And it can be different from others, but I see this as a spiritual issue, what's going on. And we got to fight this with spiritual weapons, if you want to call it that. Now, I'm not gonna belabor the point because this is not a church meeting, but that's my heart. And I really think that if we all got together, or got kind of on our knees, those of us who are Christians, and I would challenge everybody who is in that camp, get on your face before God and say, gut me like a fish, clean me up, align my thoughts with yours. So if I can just say that, that's as much preaching as I'll say, but I honestly believe that is I can't believe what that would do to a nation. And like I said, if you're not in that camp, it don't matter, because you are going to benefit, because God says, I will heal your land if you do that.
I'm going to add to that, and here's my opinion on how we can fix Canada. Fixing Canada requires some constitutional reform, constitutional amendments, for sure. There is only one way that Alberta could ensure that that constitution gets opened, and that's by becoming independent. Alberta stands up for what's right, for what's true. We set the example for the rest of Canada. When Alberta leaves, the constitution must be opened and amended. It must be. Now, two things happen there. The first one is things change structurally within Canada, maybe for the better, hopefully for the better, maybe for the worse. But the other thing that happens is a lot of the opportunity afforded to other provinces because of Alberta's contribution evaporate. There is no longer a $13 billion transfer payment going to Quebec, subsidized by Alberta. The federal government no longer receives roughly $30 billion for which they don't send anything back to us. And all of a sudden, that little dose of reality comes back. And now the eastern provinces can no longer say, we're not going to stand up and do what's right because the status quo is allowing us to just survive with entitlements while we don't speak up. All of a sudden that changes. Newfoundland and most of the Atlantic provinces, they have huge energy reserves. They should be an energy superpower. Quebec has almost as much natural gas as Alberta. Huge amount. There's no reason why they have to pretend that they need to support idiotic, ideological policy coming from the federal government that is contrary to what our values and beliefs are in order to survive. They could stand up and survive on their own. They could prosper, and they could do so while pursuing the values that they hold dear. That's another opportunity here. And if you want to reconcile Alberta independence with what can we do for Canada, the best thing you can do, and I know this from personal experience, when you see something's wrong, you stand up, you speak out, and you don't worry if you're going to go to jail for it. You do the right thing, and that courage becomes contagious. And that's how things change.
Couple quick questions. First, what happens if we are at 35%, 40% on the referendum? And number two is if we do get over 50, 51, 60, whatever the number is, how do you, as a group of people that have done such a great job of organizing all this and putting your white papers, and your people that are the lawyers and the accountants that are writing the messages and preparing the Constitution, how do you take it to the politicians and not let the politicians piss it away?
Well, when the vast majority of any place wants to go in a certain direction and the government tries to pull the politician BS that they do when they don't want to do it and they drag their feet, what do we do? What did we do when Jason Kenney wasn't doing what we wanted to see? Exactly. Now, I'll tell you that I think our premier is great, not perfect. I don't like everything she does. I don't like everything government does, but who's going to? But if she decided, her and her government decided that they were going to try and stop the will of the people, especially on something as important as this, I would spend the next year rallying all of those people to replace that government. That's what I would do.
The lawyers, but the laws and the Constitution, what you're talking about, and what the paperwork and everything that needs to be done legally is getting in place that they can't ignore you.
They couldn't ignore us.
Okay.
When the will of the people, when the will of the people speaks, they can't ignore us. Otherwise, they lose their power because their power only comes from us. Yeah, it will be in the next election.
And what happens? Go back to my first question. What happens if we're at 35%?
I don't know. We're going to be over that.
I can give you a scenario that might be very likely. So, that referendum question, if it become question number 250 on that 600-page ballot of October 19, like the next week, there's an election in Quebec, and most likely the PQ, the Separatist Party, will get into power. If they get into power, clause 1 of their party program is to do a referendum. So, contrary to political party in Alberta, in Quebec, the premier does what its party wants first, and then the rest. No, so we don't do that here in politics. No, because we have to rule for all Albertans, which is BS. But whatever. What I believe the best scenario is that October 26, PQ comes in power right after our referendum here, and then we start a program or a negotiation without Ottawa, Alberta, Quebec, with a referendum election on October 26, 2027, which is our provincial election, to accept what has been negotiated during that year. That's my best case scenario, and then we just impose on that election day in 2027 a referendum that same day in Quebec to accept that same program, and we just give our Alberta-Quebec way of seeing things on the desk of whoever prime minister is there, and this is what happens. That's the future of the country.
In order.
A question about what can we do to deal with our universities, which seem to have become Marxist indoctrination grounds, and keeping free press. There seems to be forces that are even beyond our nation, worldwide issues. Any thoughts?
Okay, well, I spent 7 years with an office at the U of A that I left the day they asked me to wear a mask to go to my desk, and I believe first the university has been woke and leftist for a long, long time. This is why we have these woke and leftist policies right now, because everybody that's been trained there in the 80s are the one that putting the laws down. I believe that where we can do a change is by controlling at least the research programs. Right now, most of the research money for university comes from federal government. And we could say NSERC and all these other agencies that fund all this research. So I did for 7 years of research at the U of A here in the civil engineering department. And 70% of my money to do the research on my products were coming from NSERC, from the federal government. So the day we decide to, again, to say the feds, know what, it's going to be provincial grant under these conditions, I believe that then, when you change the source of money, everything changes.
First of all, I just want to say thank you guys and ladies for all that you guys are doing. It's inspiring, it's encouraging, and it just gives hope. Like I said, I can't express enough how I feel when I come here and I see what I see with all these people, and I just want to say thank you to everyone that has come tonight. It just gives courage, hope. You know, without everybody, we can't do this. And I'll just make this. I love everything that I heard tonight. Was it Kathy? One thing that kind of struck me, you know, because I'm thinking about all the effort and everybody. This is all volunteer. Nobody's getting paid for this. It's just out of the sheer vision, and I'm all for it. And I'm going to do everything I can. And I believe that's the heart of everybody in here. If you could elaborate on the thing where you said pack your bags, I would like to, yeah, that didn't sit well with me. I'm not going anywhere. Just go ahead.
Before she answers, I got to say, what warms my heart is looking out in the crowds and seeing all this blue. Where did you get that beautiful sweater?
Well, the fact of the matter is, if this referendum fails, we're still here, and the dumpster fire still burns. So if you don't want to burn in the dumpster fire, and we couldn't convince enough Albertans that our one and only option, our one and only chance is this referendum, if we've failed in that, which then fails that referendum, do you really want to live in a country that looks like China? There can't be. We still have to appreciate the democratic process.
I understand that, but like I said, when you're saying there's no other option, I don't. That doesn't sit well with me. Everybody's putting all this work into it, and it's just one chance. I understand. I just believe that there's more to it. We don't stop. There's got to be more ways, and you know, if after that day, the depression and whatnot, if everybody just quits at that moment.
No, but what I see, even with our provincial government right now, is how many times do we go, oh, we see them and they go, oh yeah, okay, we're going to do this. We've got Bill 1 and we're going to do A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z with Bill 1. And we're here, right? So, and then we go, okay, well, we're going to change out who our politicians are. And so we try that and then we're here. So without a complete system change, you're just changing deck chairs.
No, I totally understand that. I mean, right? I know it needs to change, but I'm just saying, come the vote time and we don't make it, we just leave.
It's a choice.
It's a choice.
It's a choice.
So my question is, there is no plan B. That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
Actually, you know, after René Levesque lost the first referendum, and you might correct me if I'm wrong, he said, until next time.
Yes, that's correct.
Until next time. No, we're staying here and fighting. If we get 35%, no, we could lose the referendum. This could happen, right? So Quebec lost the referendum in 1995, and what happened? Their transfer payments were increased, and the House of Commons voted to give them a veto on constitutional changes. That's because they lost the referendum. They got all those extra benefits. We can lose and still come ahead, and even if we don't, we're going to stay and fight. That's just round one. Like this doesn't stop after round one. We lose round one, we're going for round two. We're sticking in this for good. I'm not going anywhere either.
Yes.
Folks, I got a quick announcement. We're supposed to be out of here by 10. It's 1:45, so we're going to get these. We're going to get these questions as fast as we can, like rapid fire questions, and then we're going to need your help to get the chairs put away if you don't mind. So let's get these last couple questions, and then we'll do the 10-second tidy.
Hi. Thank you, Ben. It does go far beyond political. Agreed. Thank you all for being here. I just want to ask, the changes that you're speaking of, going forward, fantastic. How are we going to back up the truck to the damage that's already done from things that have come about?
Well, the damage that's been done occurred over decades, and it will likely take decades to repair it, but better starting now than never.
And there's a lot of things that can be done. Like I know that money can only solve money problem, but there's a lot of stuff that can be done when we take back some of our finances.
To start taking some of the stuff that's in the schools back out.
Well, in every field.
That the kids shouldn't be learning, and that kind of stuff going forward.
Yeah, I agree, and it's on the government side is to stop letting Ottawa change our diapers, and just grow up and start asserting our rights.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Hello. I have a couple of questions. First question, I would like to know under what grounds this injunction was brought with the Indigenous people. And so, number two, if we are successful and we get the numbers, and they are successful in getting the injunction, then what happens?
The injunction is to prevent collection of signatures, period. That's it. I'm not sure what grounds they're arguing this on. It's going to be interesting to see it, but that's what it is. They're trying to, a group of people in Alberta are trying to stop the democratic process in an exercise of the will of the people. That's what's happening. I don't know what grounds it's happening on, but it is what it is. And that's why, the proponent of the question has taken some steps to mitigate that, but we just press forward.
So we keep collecting signatures?
No, if the court says
if they say no, but if we get the amount that we need, and then they are successful in stopping us, we still get to have a referendum, correct?
True, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just about the signature collection, that's it.
Okay, so as long as we get the numbers, it doesn't matter what really happens with them.
Correct.
At the end of the day.
Correct.
Perfect, that's all I wanted to know.
You got one more.
One more? Okay. The other ones were short. You guys had long answers. Okay, quickly then. Right now we have the UCP. We know that the bureaucrats are already problematic in the legislation, in the legislature. Once we get in there, the biggest challenge I have, and it is operational, right? I see a lot of the stuff you guys are doing is projected. That's what I was saying to you, Kathy, that you project these ideas, but where's the founding? So what is the go forward right now to look at dealing with the not only bureaucrats, but the election of representatives?
Constitution. Those things are outlined in the Constitution. That's the foundation. And this is important to remember, folks. I'm going to say this. Make sure you listen to this part. Everything we're saying right now, these are our opinions. These are our ideas as citizens of Alberta as to what the future of Alberta could look like. I have an idea. I have an opinion, and I advocate for that. I advocate for my ideas, and I back them up as best I can. In the end, it's not going to be me or Kathy or Ben or Dr. Wagner or the other Ben who make these rules. It's going to be the will of the people of Alberta, and that's what's important, is that finally, for the first time in Alberta's history, the will of the people chooses our future. Yeah. Thank you very much.